Hey, Rob, what's going on? Are you ready for Tenets
I'm
9 and 10?
let's go.
Right. Uh, 10 tenets of difficult conversations. Number 9, show up well. And number 10, let it breathe. Let it breathe.
Tim, last night my wife recorded me sleeping. We have this thing we do. So if we catch the other one snoring, and it was the most disgusting thing to have up close face, like snoring face. And she said, at one point, I think you actually whistled. So anyway, let it breathe is kind of funny. It's a game we play. 9 and 10. So 7 and 8 were about how to actually structure the conversation, what the sort of the rhythms in a conversation about frame, express, test, and inquire. This is about some things about how to show up and then how to deal with what the aftermath of the conversation might be. And so showing up well, I just pulled together some different things that have been important from a research perspective, but also they make practical sense. And these are some things when I say show up, like things to maybe do or avoid saying and how to think about it as you're going into the conversation. So one thing is this: avoid hyperbole. Avoid hyperbole. Statements like you never or you always are never true.
Boom.
There's always 1 out of 100 cases, even in the worst cases, that a person did not do that. And they tend to box people and they create reactivity in a person where you don't want that. So avoid hyperbole. And the most simple form of those things are you never and you always. Because if we never or we always, if we did that, that would mean the things that we're doing are a part of our personality. They are just like, they are so wired in that they are not actually behaviors or developmental. They are things that we are. And so just avoiding hyperbole. The second thing is remaining objective. When we studied populations of people under pressure in high pressure moments like conversations, what we found is that all of our samples, thousands and thousands of people, most people are not objective. They take things personally.
Yes.
Most everyone. So, because these things are personal. So the advice is remember that even the reactivity in a person with whom you're having a tough conversation, the reactivity that they may be expressing actually may have little to do with you. And we know this in practice, but it's a reminder. So the mantra would be this isn't all about me. Even if they have lashed out in their words at you, there's a really high likelihood that there are other things happening within that person that are about them or about the situation they find themselves in that are not about you. And I'm not saying it is always that. There are things about it that are about you that you need to change, but just remembering to remain objective. So avoid hyperbole, remain objective. Then here's the other big one. This is still under show up well. Remind yourself that change takes time. Oh, dude. Like how often I need to listen to my own words. Change takes time. So when we expect one conversation to change a person, we are sorely mistaken. Like it's typically a season or a rhythm or a series of conversations where that change occurs, and that change may look very different than what you intended in the first place. We talked about that a little bit before. And so it does take time. Everything regarding deeper relationships and changes, typically, sometimes it can happen fast, but it takes time. So to step back and say, like, takes time through seasons. And then the last thing is kind of under show up well is to remain true to that purpose. We talked about that in tenet number 1.
Yes.
It's not only thinking about why you're in it in real time, even in the middle of the conversation.
And even so say it, right?
It's like, this is why I'm here. And remind yourself of that is remind yourself, what is my role in this relationship? Why is this important to me? Why is it important for me to be clear? What is my role in relationship to this person? So staying true to your purpose. Then the 10th thing, and let's bust this open, is let it breathe. And you and I have talked about this in the past about what do you do after you finish this? Because, and this all comes back to number 5, which was understanding our emotional defaults. People who are really in touch with what other people think, need, and feel, they have deep empathy into relationships, tend to have a really hard time letting a conversation like this go. So they will lose sleep after the conversation. And so I know this is easier said than done. but purpose helps you to do this, is when we say let it breathe, you and I talked about this, we mean let it go for now.
Yep.
We're not saying like, I had my say, I'm out. Like I've worked with people like that. Not helpful. You know what I mean? Like, I'm out. I said what I'm supposed to say. You don't get to do that. And so it's like, let it go. And it might mean for today, for now, because it's important that you stay connected into this. But for now, let it go. Move on with your day. Tim Wenzel, what are your thoughts about those two things?
And you know what? I love these things. Hyperbole. I mean,
I love
who
that.
doesn't fall prey to that, right?
Yeah.
Because we get emotional. Even if we're trying to show up well, our anxiety about the situation, our discomfort makes us want to strengthen our position in unrealistic ways. Right. And it has the tendency to turn it back, not to our purpose, but to securing an outcome, which we talked about in number 2. Like, let the outcome go. Ideally, maybe you guys build the outcome together so that you can actually form a closer relationship after this. I love all these things. I love staying true to your purpose and even saying it. Because once you allow them, you ask them to respond, right? You ask them, what have you heard? Here's my plan. What do you think of this? And you start to get feedback. You may again start to go on an emotional journey.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And saying like, I hear what you're saying. And I really want to show up well for you today.
Yep.
So like my purpose here is, and so within that purpose, and I want to have a cool down period because let's just stick to this, right? And let's talk about this. And that goes into let it go, right? Keeping yourself calm, let it go. And I might even say, let it go for a specified period of time.
Yep.
Create a follow-up meeting to be like, hey,
yes,
this was uncomfortable for me. I know it was uncomfortable for you. And I really hope that you feel like I showed up for you today because this is really about our relationship. But I would love for us to have a break, let everything settle, think about these things, right? And then let's come back and let's discuss how we feel about it now. If there's any clarifications that need to be made, and then let's solidify that plan of action so we know how we're going to move forward, right? And this is the thing. When you have these really difficult, uncomfortable conversations, you as a leader have to manage the awkwardness and possibly the decay in team dynamic for a moment or for a season, right? A decay that you've kind of spurred. So you need to actively manage that, not control it, but actively manage that, right? And so letting it breathe, and then maybe even scheduling that time to pick it back up, to re-clarify and move forward. That really helps everybody get a break, but that secures that confidence in the next steps. And also, what's the person going to talk about? Well, what are we going to tell the team?
Right.
Because they don't want to look bad in front of the team, right? And you need to make sure that you leave them with their dignity, that you support them, and that you give them good options for continuing to do really good work. If there's things they're going to have to step away from, why are they doing that? And what are they stepping into? Right. Yep. And kind of help them craft that. What do you think about that?
I think it's good. You know what you're making is occurring to me is also, we're talking about this whole series has been on how to have a difficult, sometimes I describe it, but important conversation. And I think we can sound a little bit like we are being soft, like everybody gets to have these conversations the way that they want. And it's like, I think one thing that's different is sometimes we're not talking about a conversation, we're talking about a directive moment. And so there's interesting research out there as well that not every conversation, not every sort of interaction is one of these moments where it's going to be a conversation. I mean, you've been through some things I know where directiveness, like we both have been in these moments where it's like someone has to make a decision right now. And that's not a conversation. We're talking about a moment where you have, because oftentimes the conversation that's important is going to occur after that directive moment. We had to solve the problem as best we could. And now we're going to talk about whether or not we did it right later.
It's true.
And so it's just, I don't know why what you were describing was I felt important to say is that we're not saying we're always kind of this this level of intent is always possible. But when you're going to have that, when this is a conversation, that these are the things that would be important to show up well. And because there are so many things in the let it breathe piece that after this conversation, you have and so does the other person, a whole life to attend to.
Yes.
You know, I frankly have a text from someone right now that sent me a note, and it may be a tough conversation that's going to happen. So if it is, I'll remember this. But that person, you can take it so personally because it's interesting to think, Tim, we didn't even discuss this. Maybe it's another series, but this isn't just about how to have it. But imagine if someone's having it with you,
right?
You know, and you could actually use our framing for if they're the one who instigated the conversation to create some structure around it.
Absolutely. And if you know a conversation's coming, I love what you said. Like sometimes there's a directive, a decisive moment that conversations are going to have to come. It reminds me that if we screw up or I accidentally belittle someone or make them look foolish in front of important people, right? Apologies are great, but sometimes that's not going to cut it for that person. They feel loss.
Yeah.
And so we should really quickly say, you know, hey, I don't like the way that went. I did the wrong thing and I've had to do this. And I feel like we need to have a conversation about why I accidentally did that or why I did that and it came out that way. But that was a poor outcome. And I want to make sure that you and I are good and we can continue forward through this.
Yeah. It's good.
Awesome, man. This has been a great series.
Yeah. It's personal.
It is. It is. But you know what? I mean, look at the world. We're in that season. A lot of tough decisions are being made. There's a lot of tough things going on in business.
Yeah.
This time.
Yeah. It's good.
All right, Rob.
Thanks, Tim.
See you next time for our next conversation.